Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we'll discuss Declare Independence. This is the week of Independence Day celebration in the United States. And we'll be discussing on that how we can declare independence from this metal world and make a good choice for our spiritual progress. And I'm very happy and delighted to be welcoming back Vaish from his European trip. We very much missed you every week, and we are very happy that you're back here. Welcome back, Vaish. Yeah, we're getting better at
it. Thanks for that warm welcome. I'm really happy to be back too. It's a safe space. And I'm happy to say on my recent tour where I was in New York and then London, then Italy, and then back in London, I met people who watch this program. And my greetings go out to all of you who are watching on YouTube and other places who contacted me on the trip. It was really heartfelt. Some people are watching from behind the scenes. And I really felt it's amazing how we can make that connection from afar nowadays and then feel that we're kindred spirits. So thanks everyone for joining in, and thanks to JM for keeping the transcendental vibration going, as we have the saying KTTVG, keep the transcendental vibration going, as that's what keeps us above the water in the material world. And we're going to be talking today about the mind, because we live through the medium of the mind in this world, according to the Bhagavad Gita. And there's a way that the mind can be the friend or the enemy. And when the mind is an enemy, then we're given to control by the mind. And I say given because at some point, it's a conscious choice that we make. And we also have to do the work ourselves to bring the mind into control. So there's a way in that we can become free. I thought in the last couple of days about the word independence. I know Stephen Covey talks a little bit about this in his book, 7 Habits. And he mentions that there's this cycle of being dependent and then becoming independent and then realizing interdependence. Factually, we're never completely independent. We're always dependent. But the sense in which I'm talking about independence today, especially because it was just Independence Day and we wanted to riff off of that, is being independent and choosing the kind of medium we're working through, either the conditioned mind or the free mind. And when our mind is free from the conditions of material nature and we're able to work through it, which isn't as mysterious as it may sound. It's more akin to the ideas we may get by studying computer programming, which makes a lot of sense to probably a lot of people on here more than me. So we'll talk about becoming free from the mind and thus becoming independent from the programming that may be forcing us to work in ways that are not healthy for us. So one thing that we can do to start off with is to be aloof. I've been thinking about this word a lot lately, as after all, we're just passing through, right? Right. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the most soothing phrases, people love to hear this, and I did too, which was, this too shall pass. Everything passes by. And our sojourn here in this world is temporary. We're passing through. If anything gets you down, you can remember that they're just passing through. It's like when you're driving in traffic, you may slow down to take a look, and then you drive on and there's another destination a little further down the road, hopefully your home, where you can go and be yourself. So same thing, this life is like we're passing by something. You can slow down, observe it, and so forth. You can get really caught up in it, or you can let it go and be aloof. So aloof. In fact, I'm going to look the word up. It's such a nice sounding word, isn't it? Anybody else like it? Aloof. I hope I know how to spell it. It's Aloof. Has anybody ever looked this up before? Says not friendly. Well, I didn't mean it like that. Or cool and distant, aloof, conspicuously uninvolved and uninterested, typically through distaste. It gives a little pejorative sense here, but let's look where it came from. Mid-16th century from expressing direction, and loof, L-U-F-F. The term was originally an adverb in nautical use, meaning away and to windward. That is, with the ship's head kept close to the wind, away from a lee shore, etc., towards which it might drift. From this arose a sense of at a distance. So we can create a distance from our minds. We can be aloof. Just think, sometime when you're in anxiety, have you ever had the AMs before? Anybody? You know what they are? It's 1 a.m. in the morning, you wake up and go, oh no, I forgot to fill in the blank. Anything you forgot last night at 1 a.m.? I had jet lag the last few days because I just got back from crossing a few time zones, and I kept waking up at 1:11. I'd look at my clock across the room and said 1:11. And then I'd think, oh, all the things I have to do. These are the AMs. We wake up in the AM, could be 12 a.m., could be 1:11 a.m. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen? So the mind goes through the AMs, the mind goes through various cycles of anxiety because I'm not aloof. I'm connected to the world intimately because I'm trying to control the outcome. And when that happens, use this word, aloof, 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 stay aloof. This morning on my walk, I was thinking deeply about some problem I have to solve, and I could feel my mind grinding, and they said, aloof, aloof. And I felt, yeah, I'm just passing through. I can't control everything. I can do what I can. So let's try a little meditation, shall we? I'm going to put on some meditational music. I hope you like it. And sit up a little straighter than you were before if you wish to experience this in a concentrated fashion. And close your eyes. And take this as a time to look inwardly. I look outwardly so much. Even when I close my eyes, I'm thinking about the outside world. But now we're going to take a look inside. First, start with bringing your attention to your breath. And as you breathe, realize that this breathing has been going on all morning, and maybe this is the first time you've noticed it. And in that, you can realize that you have a superpower, and that is to choose where to put your attention. That's a calming idea anyway. If you don't like the subject or what you're being subjected to, change the subject. Move your attention. So for now, just let's rest on your breath. The miracle that's happening. There's prana, energy coming in through your nostrils, through your mouth. It's nourishing all the cells in your body. And relax, but keep an alert mind. And just breathe. And any other obligations that you have, be aloof, aloof, aloof. And let it all go. Let somebody else worry about it. Now, what we're going to observe today is a river that runs through our minds. It's always running, just like most rivers, they're always running. And the mind is constantly running. We have a to-do list, which is part of that river. Even when we leave this present body, that to-do list will still be there. It's never finished. We never complete everything and say, it's all done now. It just runs and runs and runs. So today we're going to be aloof and step back from the river and just watch it flow. You're not your mind. You are a conscious spark. You can observe the mind, which is energy. You're a superior energy. That's why you can step back from the mind and observe it. Let it flow down and down and down. And whatever to-dos are in that river, let them just go downstream. Don't be the doer, be the observer. Be, don't do. You're a human being, not a human doing right now. Keep your breath steady and deep. And settle into the aloofness of being the witness of your river-like mind. Just let it flow and flow, and notice that you're separate from it. Just as your computer runs, there's so many programs in it. Your mind's got many different algorithms. You're not your computer, you're not your mind. Your computer has different kinds of memory. They're all stored in there, but you're not those memories in your computer. They're just stored there. The memories are part of the river of your mind. The algorithms, the ways you've figured out how to navigate the world, they're all in there. But you're conscious, a spark different from that river, and you can step back from it, just watch it flow and be free to be. Aloof. And breathe. And one of the ways to stay in that position of aloofness is to take help of mantra. Man means mind, tra means to become aloof. So you can envision in your mind the mantra of one syllable, spelled O-M. It's pronounced Om. Just in your mind, create that sound and rest in that vibration as you're observing the river of your mind flow by and you're on the bank watching it go. Stay in the transcendental flow of the sound Om. And now to relish the inherent bliss that's part of your nature. Think of the two-syllable mantra, Rama, R-A-M-A. And within your mind, say Rama. And repeat it, Rama. You don't need anything, you don't need to go anywhere because you already are something. Your consciousness, which is Sat, you always exist. Chit, you always know. And Ananda, you're happy naturally, without anything added. And now we're going to pack up and leave the river of our minds. Bring your attention back to your breath. And then rub your hands together. Realize you have external senses. Open your eyes again and come back into the external world. And welcome back. So, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how there are two energies in this world. There's a material energy and the spiritual energy. Material energy is a lower energy, and he catalogs it as earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. And then he says there's another energy that's beyond that, and that's us, the observer, the conscious self. So that's an important distinction. Our bodies and our minds are vehicles. And to bring in a modern example, our minds are like computers. So I'm going to talk about one concept today, and that is the concept that can improve our lives. How many of you here would like to live a life in which you can pass through all obstacles without being upset by them? That's actually not rhetorical. I'm asking a question. Okay, 3 people. You can also put up emojis. I like emojis. I just saw this morning that they're accepted as a legal response, at least in Canada anyway. You can, if you respond with a positive emoji, it can be counted that you voted and acquiesced to a proposal. So one of the spiritual concepts that helps us have a better life, this is a universal spiritual practice, is to see how we're related to all beings, not just those in our family tree, or those of the same race or sex, but all beings. We're all spiritual sparks. This is a universal principle from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that a wise person who has knowledge, observes what's beyond the body and able to see the kinship of all beings. And in spiritual practice, there's a way in which we can rise above the ups and downs of the world. This is dynamic spiritual life where we're not affected by the ups and downs. What do I mean by ups and downs? Does anybody have any ups and downs in their lives? You're going to have to work with me today. Yeah? Okay, let's light up the chat box then. What are your ups and downs? Anybody have an up or a down? Did you ever have an up that went back down again? Or a down that went back up? Success sadhana. Are you giving that as an up? I hope. Okay. Manu said always. That's pretty true. According to the Bhagavad Gita, the way of the world is that it's always changing. And sometimes, and maybe I'll just ask a question. Did you ever feel that the world's holding you back? That it's keeping you just below the surface of the water, so you feel bubbles are coming up and you feel like maybe you're slightly drowning in the world, because as soon as you start to get ahead, then somebody comes along and ruins your whole program, and then it's hard to breathe and hard to keep up. Yeah, okay. JM's got his legal response. Thumbs up. That's legal in Canada.
Teresa says family time, absolutely both up and down time. Fortunately, mostly up.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Family time, never know what to expect. People have a conundrum about going home for the holidays. I used to notice they love to go back, see everybody, but it can be really difficult too. An up, he woke up today, Rajesh said. That's a good one. Okay, so there is a way in which we might feel the world's holding us back. So the suggestion of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, is use this one lifetime to learn to be free from the ups and downs. And there's a way that Krishna compares that to the weather. Oh, Gidget's here. Great. Turning negative energy to positive energy, finding a solution to the problem. Wow, that's nice, Gidget. Yeah, that's what this is about. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the world and all its changes, the changes that take place in our life are like the changes of weather patterns. It's nice and then it's not nice. It can happen overnight in some places. So we can take this one lifetime to rise above the level of the material flow of the river of our minds, where we feel like we're drowning. So there are a lot of people around the world. Gidget has her hand up. Yeah.
The reason I put my hand up is because when I think of it, when I said turning negative energy to positive energy, I thought about it. I would like to say a little bit more, because having raised children and now having grandchildren, and they're always the grandchildren, and so I've been teaching them to every problem there is a solution. It might take us a little time to get to the solution, but come to me with half a solution. Think about it, and come to me with half a solution and half a problem. I don't know if it's because I'm a Libra. As a Libra, we're the balance, we're the scales. So I'm always trying to balance things out. And I find that even when I can get to anger up to here, I can almost bring it down to peace.
Hey, I'm a Libra too.
People wouldn't understand.
I understand you because I'm also a Libra. Only mine's kind of an affliction because I always see both sides. So it's hard to come down hard on one side or the other. You have that balancing nature, and that's true. You do. Thanks, Gidget. Well, yeah. So how to deal with this? What is the universal spiritual practice that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita? So first of all, it's Gidget, you're getting a little love here. Teresa said, I need a little Gidget in my life. We all need a little Gidget in our life. So these two energies are very different. The material energy has no consciousness, whereas we do. And consciousness has these three features that I mentioned earlier: Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So Sat means that we exist and we're always the same. Matter, on the other hand, is always changing. It's in that category of the river that's always becoming something else, but we're steady. Chit means that we can intuit things. We can see things. We can understand what they are. We have intelligence. And Ananda means happiness. We're naturally happy. Matter doesn't have these qualities. So I'll tell a story that's from an ancient book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. There was a great teacher, and his name was Vidura. And he had a conflict with his family. He lived in a royal family. And there was politics, as usual, going on in the family. So he was one that was virtuous, and he spoke truth to power. And that doesn't always endear you to people, does it? Speaking truth to power. So in his own house, he was severely criticized by one of his relatives. So much so that he was forced out of his own house, and he left. And he traveled to many sacred places just for his own purification. That was his excuse he used to step out of the position he was in politically and just become aloof from the world. That incident moved him to that position of walking out and just taking time to observe his spiritual position. So what happens when you have that determination that I'm going to find out about my higher nature? What's one of the things that can happen that seems to be a kind of divine intervention? Anybody have any thoughts? What could happen? You change your course in life, at least internally, and you say, and it doesn't mean you have to walk away from everything like Vidura did, but you get this determination in your heart that I'm going to distinguish myself from the material world. I'm going to make spiritual progress in the ways that I mentioned before, learn how to rise above the changes of the material world and so forth. What's something that could happen in the way of kind of an intervention or a way that moves us forward on that path? Any ideas? I need at least 3, or I won't be able to. I'll have the AMs tonight. I'll wake up and say, how come they didn't give me anything? Don't give me the AMs, everybody.
Laksh says Vairagya.
Yeah, Vairagya is a sense of detachment from the world. Yeah. What's the kind of another type of thing that could happen? A practical thing that might happen in our lives when we develop that determination in our hearts.
I apologize.
Peace.
I
Yeah.
had missed the question, and I really would like to participate and respond. Could you ask it just one more time, please?
What kind of intervention seems to happen when we get this determination to want to make spiritual advancement? I have a very specific thing in my mind, so don't mind. But I'd like to hear that doesn't mean that's the only thing. Please say.
So I'm not sure I understand it. When we're wanting to make a spiritual advancement.
When we want to make spiritual advancement, our mind goes to this idea, yeah, I'm going to make progress spiritually. What's one thing that might help us on that path that seems to come out of nowhere?
Perfect. So in our quiet moments, usually for me, it's between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. Things just come to you mentally and you take note of them and take action on it. And then that will advance you and enlighten you.
Wow, that was a powerful answer. It's something I was just discussing with a colleague of mine when I was in London, because we were looking at a very specific thing that was in a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam about a sage who had 24 gurus, and he lived in the wilderness. And what had happened was he was so sincere that he started to see the divine within apparently ordinary phenomena within the world. And therefore, this ancient book on yoga and wisdom meditation says that when you're very sincere and astute, your own mind can become one of your greatest teachers. And that seems to be what you're talking. I got a heart there. Okay, now that's a legal way of saying you appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was profound. Marilia, what else? JM.
There are quite a few things coming in.
Okay.
Essence says peace. And then Charles says, you meet an amazing teacher. Laksh says,
Charles hit the jackpot as far as I'm concerned. He must have done a Vulcan mind meld because that's exactly what I had in my mind. Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear the other things.
Yeah. Laksh also said, a guru may come in your life.
Yeah.
Claudia says, you quit judging things as good or bad and move through them.
Oh, nice.
Anup says, an intense yearning for God.
Nice.
Mukta says, start enjoying the things the way it is.
Wow. I like that.
Claudia adds on more, see the beauty in everything.
Oh, God, what's that? Great answers. Amazing. Well, it just goes to show how we all have, because we're spiritual beings, we all have an intuitive sense of what it means when we turn our minds to the spiritual path. Even as we're working in the world, all of these things happen. And going back to what Charles said, and who else said? About
Laksh.
Oh, Laksh. Yeah. So that's what happened to Vidura. When Vidura left home and he was fully determined, that I'm going to make spiritual advancement, he met a very powerful sage, somebody who had fully dedicated his life, who was more knowledgeable at that time than Vidura. So that is something that's mentioned in these ancient wisdom literatures, that all kinds of help come to us. In fact, the first person who attempted to climb Mount Everest wasn't a big thing. Nowadays, everybody does it. But it's so crowded up there, it's hard to get back down again. It's a big lineup. But the first one, before there were a lot of high-tech devices to help and so forth, said that once he had made the determination to do it, then that's when all the energy came. So once we make a spiritual determination, then we get all kinds of help. One of the ways we get help is from people who are very knowledgeable and who are very advanced. So that's what happened to Vidura. He left his house, he left his homestead, he left his political position, just walked away. And it's interesting because he went to a place that's still very spiritually vibrant and powerful and famous. It's in India. It's called Hardwar. And when I was writing the word Hardwar, I actually accidentally wrote Harvard. So I had Hardwar versus Harvard. It's a lot of the same. It just has all the same letters except for the W. And so Hardwar is sort of the Harvard of spiritual practice. And there he met this great teacher, or sage, Maitreya. And although Vidura was already considered a very advanced person, he asked Maitreya, why is it, even though I'm spiritual, that I don't feel my spiritual nature? And this can be a question we can ask too, because we know we're spiritual, or at least we can understand philosophically that we're spiritual. Or if we take the theory of the Bhagavad Gita, we're not our bodies, but we're actually the soul beyond the body and so forth. But why don't I feel it as much as I could? So Maitreya gave a very practical and helpful answer. Would you like to hear it? I need a legal response. I got one from JM. He gave a thumbs up. Legal in Canada. Gidget's in. Rajesh is in. Charles is in. Aditya's in. Okay. So he gave the example of the moon reflected on water. If any of you saw the Purnima the other night, the full moon, it was quite astounding. And the steady moon with all its powerful, soothing light coming down. Now, just see that, imagine that moon is reflected on water. Now, if you're observing that beautiful full moon on the water, and then a breeze comes along, the water might ripple. And then what will the moon look like? When you look at it in the sky, it's just there, steady, right? But if you look at it on the water and there's a breeze and the water's rippling, what will the moon look like? Reflected moon, what will it look like?
Choppy and flowing.
Yes, who said choppy and flowing? That's
Aurelia.
some kind of poets on here today. Choppy
Marilia.
Marilia. Okay. So that's the way our lives can be. A little choppy. It seems choppy and so forth. And why is that? We're steady, but we're looking at a reflection of our life on the mind. The mind is a reflective surface. And so because the mind is material, it also moves, it also shifts. So if we're observing ourselves in the mirror of the mind, which is another metaphor for it, then we think we're always changing. For instance, have you ever been startled by the fact that your body's changing? Anybody? You look down and go like, wait a minute, how did that happen? You're either growing or you're declining or whatever it may be. You're like, wait a minute, it was here yesterday. Where is it now? Or where did this thing come from? The body is changing constantly. And the mind is like that also. It's subtle, subtler than the gross body. There's the hardware and the software. So that's always changing. So when we observe ourself through the medium of the mind, we may feel that, oh, I'm always changing. And so the practice of yoga and bhakti means to see our original nature all the time and not to be disturbed by the changes in the material world, which include the changes in the mind. And we can experience the self by overcoming the mind. In fact, you'll notice in all the various descriptions of yoga practice, for instance, the Yoga Sutra by Patanjali, he gives this definition of yoga as the stilling of the mind. So that's why yogis are very careful. And they ask themselves when they're interacting with the world, how will this affect my mind? If you're looking at a reflection of the moon in a still pond and then you throw a stone in there, it's going to be turbulent for a while and the reflection is going to be disturbed. So in the same way, the ways our minds are, the way we interact with the world will affect our minds in various ways too. So the practice of yoga, meditation, and so forth allows us to not only develop a stiller mind, but also to realize that I'm aloof from the mind. I'm different from the mind. So let's go back to the computer technology for a minute. Let's just say that somebody locked you in a dark closet and all you had in there was your computer and internet connection. How's that sound? Somebody might say, not bad. That's what I do anyway. But within that closet, you can send, you can receive, and store information. So this is partly the way the mind is for us. It's a place where we receive and we store information, and it's a place from which we send out information also. And just like your computer, like on my desk right now, there are all kinds of appendages to my computer. There's a speaker system that I'm listening to all of you when you're speaking up. It's coming through my computer, and then there's a little mini jack on my Mac, and I have a speaker system that's hooked up there. And so when I hear the sound, it comes out. So that's like our ears. They're probably a mini jack here. I hope I don't pull too hard and pull one off. But then we have these eyes. They're like cameras. They're attached to the computer. I'm looking at a camera right now. I'm looking at you through a camera. You're looking at me through a camera. And these are the eyes. And so we have all these senses: touch, tongue, nose, and actually all of these things are becoming available virtually now. I mean, already it's a miracle. We take it for granted perhaps, but the way we're able to see one another right now through all these devices, and we can hear one another, that's also a miracle from a distance, isn't it? And now there are ways in which virtually we'll be able to smell things or touch things that are objects in the world that have come through our virtual setup. Okay, we're getting a few comments, or at least one I saw come in, Jan, but I haven't read it yet. Could you relay that so we can have interaction?
Sure. Before that, can I just make one quick announcement?
Of course.
Yeah. So we are happy to share that we are starting a new in-person event for those who are in and around Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Los Altos, or Mountain View, or anyone in Bay Area are free to join us. It's called the Mantra Zone, next stop the Mantra Zone, where we'll have mantra music, short wisdom discussion, and vegetarian dinner. It begins on Friday, July 14th, 6:30 p.m. To 8 p.m. At Palo Alto. I will post the sign-up sheet in the chat box. So if you are interested to come have a evening of spiritual soothing music and discussion, please join us. Vaish will also be joining once in a while as much as he can. He'll also come up there. So yeah, just wanted to share this. It's starting next Friday. Next stop, the Mantra Zone. at 6:30 p.m. All are welcome. So I just want to share that. Thank you.
Of course, I'm going to come. It's the best vegetarian food I've ever had. And I tried the QR code here, and it takes me to a really nice sign-up sheet, mantra meditation sign-up. That's very handy. Hope you all had a chance to hit the code. Maybe JM will show it at the end also.
Sure, I will. Thank you for
Oh,
that.
there it is right there. Okay, yeah. Nice.
Thank you. And Laksh shared, unfortunately, unlike the computer, the mind tends to distort that which it sees, stores, or retrieves, not a faithful instrument.
Okay, let's look at it. Now, I'm not a computer programmer, but I have some idea how it works. Okay. So now, and yes, Laksh, the computer can mess things up. In fact, I have an appointment at the Genius Bar right after this because my computer's been shutting off for no apparent reason. I'm glad it hasn't done it today, but it just shuts off on its own free will, or it doesn't have free will, but there's some mechanical problem. So let's look at something for a minute. Then I want to. This is one of the important aspects of today's topic, and go back to the topic: independence and freedom from the mind. So let's just ask the programmers who are on here today: can you program a computer so that if you flash a red light in front of the computer's camera, it would say, "I don't like red"? We do that? Come on, programmers, tell me.
Laksh says yes.
Thank you, Laksh. Okay, then if you flash a blue light, it might say, "I like blue." Is that possible? Yes, thank you, Laksh will be our attendant engineer today. So does the computer actually have an emotional preference, or was it just programmed in?
Nirali says no.
Thank you, Nirali. Okay, we got consultancy here. So it doesn't matter how complex the computer is. It doesn't have an emotional preference. It's not that if you get enough mechanical sophistication that you're going to then have consciousness. That's not how the Vedas describe consciousness. It's a different energy altogether. And we're the user of the computer. We work through it. And so if you get have you ever heard the song Three Blind Mice? If not, if you don't raise your hand, I'm gonna have to sing it to you. Okay, three blind mice, see how they run. So three blind mice. So three blind mice, if you put them all together, can they see? No. If you put 3,000 blind mice together, can they see? Because they're combined together? No. So similarly, when you have unconscious parts and you put them all together, it doesn't necessarily mean, even if they're hundreds, thousands, millions of combinations and permutations, like an AI, forming from many different places, it doesn't mean that it has conscious choice or emotion. It's the same thing. It's matter. So now my next question is to our consultants, Laksh and Nirali, and SN also answered. And that is, can we reprogram the computer to say, "I like red, I don't like blue"?
Nirali says yes.
Yes, thank you, Nirali. Okay, so think about a time when you, for instance, walked into a room somewhere, and let's say it was painted white, and you looked at the white room, and then you immediately thought, why'd they paint it white? You just have an immediate reaction. It's like, white? That's horrible. It looks like a hospital. Or, saw somebody in my neighborhood painted their house a very odd color. And we drove past it, and my wife said, "What'd they do that for?" It was instantaneous response. Have you ever had something like that happen, where you saw something painted in a certain way, or some kind of food you saw, it's like, ooh, who would eat that? Have you ever seen that? Felt that? Yeah. So this is what the Bhagavad Gita describes. The mind is programmed in a certain way. The mind is programmed in a certain way to say, I like this, I don't like that. For instance, there are some countries where insects are considered a comfort food. What are comfort foods here in America, would you say? Name 2 comfort foods. Burger, chocolate, pizza, French fries. Okay. Yeah. So then in some other countries, baked, I guess if you're a health nut, or fried, if you're not, crickets are a comfort food. Now, somebody might see fried cricket and say, oh, how could you eat that? In fact, if you told me I'll give you $10 if you eat it, I would say, no, thank you. Even if you said 1,000, I wouldn't do it. So I'm programmed in a certain way. And so imagine somebody grew up in a culture where they eat crickets. And so somebody like mother brings a child who's down a little bit, and the mother said, here, I brought you some crickets. And the person eats the crickets and they feel my mom's here. The crickets are okay. It's part of the culture. They don't process all that. It's just programmed in because that's what you grew up with. So we have cultural preferences and they're very different. These are the red and blue lights. Now, from childhood, someone says crickets are good. If you bring them out and sell them on the streets of San Francisco, you might be arrested by somebody who says, how can you dare kill these crickets and sell them sell them on the street, right? So I'm just giving these as an example of the way that we've been programmed with certain codes. And the mind can be coded like that in any way. So, yes. So there are ways in which to rise beyond the coding of the mind, which just automatically pushes us in a certain way. We have an automatic reaction to it. And that way of becoming free from these codes is a way of freedom, freeing the mind from its natural proclivity to go in a certain direction. And that's called buddhi yoga. So buddhi means intelligence. It's a kind of clear reasoning beyond the programming. If anybody's ever had, for instance, an experience where, let's say you saw something in a store window, like let's say a person's walking down the road and they saw something, an advertisement for something. There was a image of a very attractive woman and she's holding a bottle of some kind of alcoholic beverage, and then it's advertised, and the person thinks, let me go there and get it. But then the intelligence comes that, oh, I remember when I got entangled in this beverage, I almost lost everything in my life. And my life partner told me that if you do that again, then we're not going to have a relationship. And all this goes through the mind. And then instead of crossing the street, the person said, I think I'll go the other direction. So there was a program that's there to go for it. And then there's the intelligence that rises above it and says, maybe we won't. We'll go in a different direction. JM.
Yeah, SG just asked a question. What does it mean stilling the mind when one is going through a challenging situation? Say their loved one is sick or lost their job or getting hurt by someone.
Yeah. What it means is that, first of all, we practiced in the very beginning to be aloof from the mind. This is what, in the last example I gave, creates some space between the automatic reaction to the red light, the blue light, that's already programmed in. That's intelligence above the mind, because the mind accepts or rejects based on the coding. But then we have the intelligence, which is called buddhi. So there's three aspects to the mind and how it works, which is called manas, ahankar, and buddhi. So manas is the clearinghouse for all of the sensory input that comes from the world. And the ahankar is the juncture between us and the outside world, like the little device that helps us connect on a virtual machine and think that I'm part of it, part of that imagery. I'm interacting with it and I'm doing things. And then the manas is the intellect, the buddhi is the intellect that's able to reason beyond just the impulses and to evaluate it and say, that's a conditioning that the mind is going, yes, I don't like red, I like blue, and so forth. So one of the first steps that's mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is to notice this hierarchy and develop it. He says at the end of the 3rd chapter of the Gita that by developing your buddhi, then you can rise above the impulses of the mind. So this is the intelligence of the buddhi can become aware of consequences. So sometimes when we're just absorbed in the mind and an option is given to us and we just take it impulsively, like people sometimes get intoxicated and they do things they ordinarily wouldn't do, right? Is that right? Yeah, that's right. He was like, why did you do that? Oh, I was intoxicated. I did it. Their buddhi wasn't working properly. They just got absorbed in the mind and it felt good, so he did it. And then there's the next day when you wake up and say, oh, what did I do? You know, there can be dire consequences. So the buddhi, the intelligence, allows us to analyze according to consequences. So if I do this, this is going to happen, and I don't want that to happen. Therefore, I'll withhold gratification. Now, about that, so that's one level of controlling the mind. And as far as stilling the mind is material, and everything material is subjected to 3 qualities. There's sattva, rajas, and tamas in descending order in the hierarchy. And the highest is sattva, which means light, clarity, which means stillness of mind. And rajas means the mind is moving in such a way that it agitates us to want more. No matter how much we have now, we want more. In sattva, because the mind is still, we're able to see that we already are something. We don't have to become something else. What we are is valuable. We're able to see that we're spiritual. And in tamas, we can't see anything. And also, it's difficult for us to pursue material desires because we're so much in darkness that we become helpless. And these 3 qualities are always mixing and matching constantly in the world, just like a kaleidoscope. You're turning it, and say there's 3 primary colors in the kaleidoscope, but they're always mixing into different combinations and permutations. So the mind is like that with these 3 qualities. So to answer your question, finally, there is a way in which the mind can be stilled by infusing it or training it in the quality of sattva. Sattva can be cultivated by one's lifestyle, but most directly, it can be cultivated through yoga with our original conscious source, which the Vedas call Krishna. Krishna is the original conscious source of everything. And when you reconnect your mind, says Patanjali, he uses a different word. He calls that original conscious divine source that we emanate from Ishwar. He calls it Ishwar Pranidhan. If you turn your attention to the source, to Ishwar, then the mind naturally becomes clear. And that's the shortcut. It doesn't help also, it does help also and is imperative actually to live in a way that the mind is steeped in sattva. So what are some of those things? They're on the app that we created called Success Sadhana, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it has to do with certain habits that you can bring into your life that have to do with how much you sleep or the times that you sleep, the kinds of foods that you eat, the kinds of association that you have, the environment that you live in. And also there are practices for just keeping your life orderly and neat. And then spiritual practices like mantra. As I mentioned before, man means mind and tra means to deliver. So the mantra can also make the mind still. We practiced it at the beginning. Remember, we did Om and Rama. There are mantras that you can practice, and they help to still the mind and bring it to clarity and bring it sattva. And then in the highest state of sattva, it's called Shuddha sattva, where there's no possibility of those lower modes mixing in. Then you have complete clarity. So these are the stages of, or some of the stages of spiritual advancement put on it in technical terms. So, I was thinking today that people get addicted to video games. In fact, I read it that it's a certified disease. It's a psychological addiction that some people get. A lot of kids get it. They get so addicted. In fact, there's certain games that are so addicting, they get into it and they can't stop doing it even for 24 hours a day. And that's all they identify with. So we can also become diseased and just imagine the whole world as a video game. And we get so into it that we forget ourselves. And that's all we're absorbed in, just watching the video game and playing it and interacting through this very mechanical system we have here with the ears and the eyes and the mind. The mind's the interface to the world around us, and we're watching it on the screen of our mind, and we're trying to win the game, and we become addicted to it. So this is addicted to the false image of the world. And there was a movie called The Matrix. I looked this up online, and it says this: in the first episode of the film trilogy, The Matrix, lead character Neo was given the option of taking a red pill, which would enable him to understand what was actually occurring outside the illusion created by the Matrix, or a blue pill, which would allow him to return to experiencing only the illusion. So there is a way in which the Gita describes how in the human life we come to this juncture where we can understand, okay, there's a red pill and a blue pill. I can just take, the blue pill and go back into illusion. Well, forget the whole thing. I'll just be absorbed in the game. And then there's the red pill, which is I make a conscious choice to practice spiritually, to rise above the changes of the world, to understand that I'm different from my body. Jay, I'm going to stop there, and let's cultivate any of the last comments or questions.
Sure. Laksh asked a question: moving to sattva from tamas, does it have to go through rajas, or can you bypass it? Also, most of us are a mixture of these things. What do we need to be aware of as we work towards sattva?
Well, the best way to go from the lowest mode to the highest, the first answer is they're always mixing. So it's just like when you're purifying something, you do it gradually. It comes in increments. So generally, as we're purifying the mind through the practices of bhakti yoga, it gradually becomes purer and purer. So this is described in for instance, in the Srimad Bhagavatams, Nashta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva. It says that there are interim stages where you're going from ignorance to mixed ignorance and passion and goodness, and then you can rise above it all. So there's that. And the best way to do that is through direct process of bhakti yoga, which is to contemplate our original divine source, Krishna, who's love personified, who's the source of everything. And that you can do through various practices of bhakti. What else, Chayam?
Ram is asking how to awaken intelligence. Can you explain the shortcut, Krishna Ishvara?
One of the shortcuts is to listening and in discussing. One of the most highly recommended processes is what we're doing right now. We're just discussing it. It's a discussion, right? We're talking back and forth. And when we come into these discussions, we're describing the difference between a reality and illusion. So one of the objectives of these ancient wisdom literatures is distinguishing a reality from illusion for the welfare of everyone. And we come into a group and discuss, and JM's holding these programs at his place called the Mantra Zone. When you go into the Mantra Zone and you have these discussions, then you clarify what's what. You make a determination, what's most important to me. Without such preparation of the mind, then we just go with the programming, and we continue doing that until we have something that lifts us out. For instance, hearing from a higher source. That's it, right, JM?
Yes.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for participating. I'm really touched. Glad to be back. I hope there was something you're taking away from today that is helpful to you. Thanks, Rebecca and Teresa. Remember, emojis are legal. Okay, I got another one from SG. Gave me a whole new vision of emojis. You can be held legal in court. So if you give a heart, then it actually goes somewhere. It definitely came to me. Thanks, everyone. I mentioned Charles when I met a very nice person who had been watching this show for a few years in Ireland. He flew all the way to London to meet me and said, I've been watching this show from Ireland from my farm for the last few years. And he said, I know JM, I know Charles. He mentioned you because you're on here.
Oh, that's so kind. Warms my heart. I was going to
everyone
type
on the show, you're
chat.
getting international exposure. I don't know if you like that or not, but
yeah, I just want to say, my subscriber, I missed you so much. So thank you. It's great to have you back.
And the same towards you.
It was a wonderful session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, yes. And while I was in London, I met somebody coming back from the Himalayas, JM. I said, now, listen, I've been telling people this for a long time. You better confirm it for me. And he said, well, what is it? What are you thinking? What are you saying? I said, the yogis, they come out of their caves and they see one another on the peaks of the mountains in the practice area where they're doing meditation, and they greet one another. They're boisterous. They call out this phrase that means keep the transcendental vibration going. And they raise their hands high in the air. He said, yep, immediately. He didn't even hesitate. He said, that's exactly what happens. I saw it for myself. So everybody, you can rest assured. And let's try it. The phrase is Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Everyone, see you soon.
Hari Bol.